Right, so welcome to my talk all about protecting hedgehogs as we go into 2021. So this talk is going to be a bit of a mishmash of helping our hedgehogs out of hibernation this year, what we can do to help them, as well as our progress in the project as well. And I'm sure a lot of you know we are approaching Hedgehog Awareness Week, which is next week, which is the best week of the year. So we will be mentioning that as well as we go. So what we'll be covering in this talk is a bit of background on hibernation, just to get that out there. We are in the time where hedgehogs are waking up and joining our gardens again. So I'll just cover a bit about hibernation, a bit about the weight that they lose over winter, so just how much they've lost, how much we have to help them, how we can help them when they have woken up, when we notice that they're back in our gardens again, some updates on the Hedgehog Heroes of Shropshire 2021 project and how we are going on so far, and a bit about Hedgehog Week and what that's all about and the aims for this year. I forgot to mention, if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat and I will come to them at the end of the PowerPoint as well. So a bit of an introduction to hibernation. So hedgehogs do typically hibernate from autumn to spring, as a lot of us do know. So this is about October to March, and a lot of people are even starting to notice a lot of courting behaviour now. So quite a few have been awake for a while in some circumstances, but it can obviously vary depending on temperature and food availability. So you often get hedgehogs waking up in warm spells, warm bursts, and then maybe going back again as it gets a bit colder, and sort of goes up and down until we have prolonged warm spells for them to come out again. So hibernation has attracted a lot of interest with scientists as well, just about how it does work, because there's been this myth that it's a sort of form of living death, as they say, because there's the question of how normally warm-blooded animals can just go cold and apparently lifeless for just weeks at a time and still survive. It's really quite an amazing thing that hedgehogs do. So they are hibernators, and very few mammals do actually hibernate, and we usually think of it as a bit of a winter sleep, but it is actually a lot more than that. So it is a complicated and often perilous energy conservation strategy. So it's not just about going to sleep. It's not just a simple sleep that hedgehogs go through. In sleep, all of the bodily functions do remain nearly normal. But when it comes to hedgehogs and hibernation, the metabolism is almost at a standstill. So the hedgehog basically abandons being warm-blooded for winter. That's how they're able to hibernate as they do. So this is really, really costly in terms of their energy as well. And it actually allows its temperature to fall to match that of the environment. Not usually below freezing, but it does fall sort of to the cold temperatures that are around. And they do conserve their energy by turning down their sort of internal thermostats during the cold periods of the year. So it's a way for lots of creatures like butterflies and bats hibernate as well, to survive the cold, the dark winters, without having to forage for food or migrate somewhere warmer. So they've simply evolved this strategy that has worked for them for years and years and years. But why does it happen? So, like all other animals, hedgehogs do need this energy in order to maintain their normal body activities, to grow, to move about. They need this energy. So the energy comes from their food, and hedgehogs eat their slugs, their beetles, their worms, their snails, their caterpillars, and as the weather gets colder, obviously this food becomes more difficult to find. And so they decide to slow down their use of energy. They respond to the drop in food availability and resource availability. So it's quite clever. So they adopt this strategy where they become inactive and use as little energy as possible until the weather and those food supplies do improve. So this reduces the need for feeding, and this is done by going into torpor. And according to some studies on captive individuals, they suggest that hedgehogs lose 1 or 2 grams of their body weight, which is quite considerable for a hedgehog size, per day whilst in hibernation. So by the time the hedgehog has fully woken and is ready to bumble about again, it really needs to eat and drink as a matter of priority. So that is their first job as soon as they do wake up. But I do like to touch on climate change and the effects that it's having on hedgehogs as they wake up from hibernation year after year. So this is probably one of the biggest threats to hedgehogs, growing threats to hedgehogs at the moment. So obviously, as hibernating mammals, the uncertainty that's caused by warmer, wetter winters, which are predicted under existing climate models for the UK, they may have these detrimental impacts on hedgehogs. So hedgehogs are known to periodically awake from hibernation and forage for short periods during warm winter spells. But obviously, as we progress through our years and as climate change gets more and more known around us and we start to see the effects of it, hedgehogs' source of food is going to respond in the same way, and they're not going to be able to find the food even though they're awake. So they're getting confused with these warmer temperatures, these warmer climates that are coming. And so it's kind of upsetting the natural balance that hedgehogs have been so used to. So these warmer winters, these periods of winter waking may actually be increasing. So this actually really does pose problems if the energy that hedgehogs have lost during winter waking is not replaced due to the lack of food sources that are available. So, for example, last year, quite a few hedgehogs may not have properly hibernated at all. It really wasn't the coldest winter, and it's up to us now to actually start to adapt with them and start to help provide for them in this time, because they just can't adapt quick enough to the rates that climate change is. So it's quite an important thing that affects all wildlife, as we're starting to realise. So how can we help them when they do wake up in 2021? And this is keeping in mind the climate change we've discussed and some of the problems they can face. So obviously a huge one is to prepare your garden and make sure that your garden is ready to welcome your hedgehog visitors. So whilst it may be tempting to plant sort of these low maintenance evergreen shrubs, these are actually poor value for hedgehogs, as I've found through research, as they're not great for insects and don't provide this nesting material that they need. So we start to think about replacing those with UK grown sort of fruit tree, hawthorn, hazel, also all these wildflowers. I love to note the connection between wildflowers and hedgehogs because it helps all wildlife as well. Your bees, your butterflies, all the insects. If there's an abundance of insects in your garden, hedgehogs are going to thrive off the back of that as well. And I always say a lot of hedgehog friendly features are actually general wildlife friendly features that really don't require that much work or maintenance. So if you have a sunny corner of a bed to spare, You can sow some seeds, and the hedgehogs will reap the rewards later in that season. So the flowers encourage the insects, as I've said, and the hedgehogs will then follow. A big one is, if we do have our feeding stations, it's nice to always keep those maintained. So feeding stations obviously provide shelter over the food while hedgehogs are eating it, but it does also stop these larger mammals like cats and foxes from getting at the food. But of course, if you're like me and you've made your feeding station out of a plastic storage box with a bit of a plant pot stuck into it, it does need quite a bit of maintenance every now and then. And we want to make sure that it does keep these mammals out and the hedgehogs do get the food that they so desperately need. So you can use bricks, you can use weighted stones to stop these feeding stations from moving. You can build obstacles outside or even create tunnels. So I had quite a battle with the cats in my garden and my hedgehog tunnel. So I actually had to improvise and make a tunnel into the feeding station to stop these cats that were very, very, very determined to get inside. So obviously all hedgehogs that emerge from hibernation are likely to be hungry. And so it's food, it's nesting sites, and then they'll get on to, well, the males will get on to looking for mates. But obviously nesting sites are a huge important one as well as the food. So wood piles are great as they're both a potential nesting site and a food source. So even if you have the perfect hedgehog garden, I always say you can do more. So I always encourage to add some of the following. You can think about some thickets, wood piles, leafy piles, compost heaps are also a big one. So we do also say, obviously, be safe and don't go sort of stabbing your pitchforks into compost piles and things, especially as we get deeper into summer when females will start to be nesting. So we can keep our garden nice and tidy, but it's just leaving just one corner where you can just leave a pile or leave some nesting material. And sometimes that one corner is all hedgehogs need to think, I'm going to stop here and give birth here. And it can make the world of a difference to them, just to know that it's there. So obviously a huge one that connects to this is access to your garden. So you want, if possible, every boundary in your garden to be connected is absolutely brilliant. But this isn't always the case. You don't always need, you know, oh, my garden's terrible because I only have one hole or I only have one access point. This is always a fantastic place to start. And sometimes only one hole is all they need. So in my project last year, I went to Little Wenlock Village, and I had a beautiful garden. It had beautiful garden, beautiful connectivity from the front to the back garden, but there was no connectivity actually onto the property itself. So this couple actually put one hole in their front gate of their garden, and the next night they had some hedgehog droppings in the hole of that gate. Then the next night they put a camera out, and what do you know, they had a hedgehog coming through, and they hadn't had one for years and years and years. So they then started just putting more and more holes in. But the point is that you don't need the most connected garden to have hedgehogs. You just need at least one access point or two, front to back, side to side, and you can welcome some little spiky visitors that will be glad to come by. So you've probably obviously heard that hedgehogs do run miles and miles every night. So it's mainly the males that will just keep running and running, and they need this connectivity to go and find their mates, to find their food. And females feel quite comfortable with the smaller territories, and they need that connectivity to make sure they can find this nesting material, stay close to the habitats that they know. So it really is vital. And actually, the good news also is that more hedgehog friendly options are becoming more available commercially as well. So local building companies and distributors are starting to think about this, and there is actually a company in Shropshire, Shropshire Fencing Limited, that do sell hedgehog friendly gravel boards. It is possible to cut holes in gravel boards, but it takes a lot of work, and I've heard you need a core drill to do that, but I'm not quite the one to know what tools do what. So it's much easier to get a nice friendly gravel board and maybe swap those. So another way to help them, of course, is to have a ready supply of water and food for your hedgehog, but also for all of your garden wildlife. So during these cold or dry periods, the creepy crawlies they eat are obviously much scarcer in gardens. So hedgehogs will benefit hugely from a shallow dish of water and supplementary feeding. So it's important to remember that this food is only supplementary to their natural diet. So we want to make sure we provide a nice mixture of food to get all the nutrients that they need. And we want to place it in a shallow dish in a sheltered area of the garden. And we usually do this at sunset or as it's getting dark, and clear it up in the morning as well. So I do get a lot of questions about rats and how, well, a lot of people that don't want to put food out because they don't want to encourage their rats. They know they have rats. And the way I sort of say to combat this is really keeping your feeding station area well maintained and well cleaned during the daytime, clearing up any mess and keeping it enclosed if you can. So a lot of feeding stations made out of storage boxes have lids on and they're enclosed, so all the stink sort of keeps in there and you can clean it easily. And if you really don't want to attract much else, you can try just using the dry sort of kibble and cat biscuits, so that you don't have the stinky meat as well. So any combination of these meat-based wet dog or cat foods. So we recommend the poultry cat meat and poultry dog meat and cat biscuits as well. So this food literally provides everything a hedgehog could need from us as a supplementary food item. So they're getting everything they need. Basically, it's so easy, especially if you have cats or if you have a dog and you just have some leftovers. It's worth putting them out and helping these hedgehogs get by. And it's such a cheaper alternative a lot of the time to official sort of branded hedgehog food. So a lot of rescues and professional bodies are trying to sort of weave away from hedgehog brand foods and sticking to just this cat food, these cat biscuits, this meat, because we know what's in this food and we don't always know just how much of what they've put into these hedgehog foods. They're often quite fatty, so it is often cheaper and easier just to go for this sort of food. And for example, I just get sort of Asda's own poultry cat meat and cat biscuits, and it goes down a treat. And of course, I do always have to mention that hedgehogs are lactose intolerant, and milk is just not so good for them, sorry. And bread, again, it's this milk and bread myth that we still do have to bust in some places. And of course, almost most importantly is this water supply. So a nice shallow dish in your garden. I have two just in case, especially in hot periods. Something that the hedgehogs don't have to climb up to, that they can comfortably lean down and drink from. And it's no bother to just keep this there all year round, so that there is constantly a water supply there for all the wildlife. So I've had birds bathing in them and foxes drinking from them. So it is just such a welcome help for our garden wildlife. So we can also prepare our hedgehog houses for summer nests. So this is obviously after their winter use, is that when we'll recommend you can start clearing them out when your hedgehog has moved out after hibernation, essentially. So obviously a big way of testing if someone's moved out is putting an obstacle in front of the entry and seeing if it gets moved when hedgehogs come out. We don't always advise peeking and poking, just in case you really do disturb something. So it's best not to clean out until you're absolutely certain that your hedgehog isn't in there anymore. So yeah. So to clean it, we want to empty this old foliage that was in there, and you can clean the house using hot water and a scrubbing brush. And this is from the British Hedgehog Preservation Society advice. So they say you can use this pyrethrum powder, which is suitable for caged birds. So apparently that's quite good for cleaning out your houses as well. I usually just use the hot water and the brush and do it that way. But it often does depend on the material of your house as well. So you also might prefer to leave some clean bedding materials in a bundle by the house once it's cleaned and it's ready. So hedgehogs do like to sort of finish off their own nests and make them up themselves. So it's best not to fill them completely. I often put maybe a little bit in the house and the hedgehogs do the rest and pile it all up. And obviously, on no account should anything on the hedgehog house be creosoted or treated with non-water-based preservatives, things like that. So, because that can be quite harmful to them if left on for a while. So water-based preservatives should be on the outside of the box only as well. So a spot of hedgehog-friendly gardening as well that we can do. Netting, of course, it's important to keep netting at least a foot above ground. So these are football goals, your vegetable patch netting, anything at all. If you think about hedgehog spines, getting in is much easier than pulling back out again because they go against the grain. So this can make the world of a difference, and hedgehogs can really struggle for hours if they are stuck somewhere and we might not know. So ponds, I myself created a lockdown pond last year, and the first thing I did was to make sure there were plenty of ramps around the side of the pond to make sure hedgehogs could get back out again. So some people still don't know that hedgehogs are absolutely brilliant swimmers. So they are really good swimmers. They just can only swim for so long. They often drown because they just can't find this exit that they need. So it's just so vital and really important. And to be honest, a pond is a feature that benefits all wildlife again in your garden. And it can be quite a nice project to take up. Drains, we want to keep them covered. So if your drains sort of had quite the battering during winter or just needs replacing, it's always a good thing to think about doing before hedgehogs are active again. They are really, really good at falling down these small drains and just getting completely stuck. And it's just so simple to avoid. And these wild patches, so strimmer awareness and mowing awareness, we want to make sure that whatever we are cutting, whatever we are strimming, we're not going to disturb or injure any hedgehogs. So we need to keep in mind hedgehogs may have, you know, lay down in your long grass for the night. They may be in your bushes for the night that you're going to strim. It's just a second thought we need to keep there and to be aware of when we do this sort of spring cleaning. And the compost piles, again, pitchforks, things like that. If you're turning your compost, if you're doing anything with it, just be aware there may well be a habitant in there, especially even reptiles and things like that. They quite like warm compost piles as well. And the slug pellets, I always try and mention, so slug pellets and pesticides, if you can, just try not to use them at all. Hedgehogs are our own pesticides, essentially. They will munch on whatever they can. So I always like to think putting the work into encouraging hedgehogs will solve the problem, essentially, anyway, if we do it good enough. So I think as of April, actually, I can never say it, metaldehyde slug pellets have been banned again. So they were banned and then unbanned, and now they're banned again. So this obviously gets the word out that it's just best to avoid and to try alternatives. So there's always a thing about sheds as well. So we like to do a bit of spring cleaning, and we want to make sure no one has moved in there over winter, decided to make a home of it and is still in there. So it's just something to keep in mind and to be aware of again. So some updates on the Hedgehog Heroes of Shropshire project 2021. Just in case anyone sort of might have missed what we did last year, I have put up a bit of a project outline all about what this project is about. So we have 2 phases to the project, and phase 1 is where we begin posting some questionnaires in each area. So these questionnaires have 2 sides on them, and the first side is all about a resident's hedgehog sightings they might have had, when they saw them, where they saw them, so how recent these were, and if they are putting out any active sort of hedgehog encouragement. So this is hedgehog houses, supplementary food, these sorts of things. And then the second side of the questionnaire is all about the garden. So the connectivity, the habitats you have in your garden management, if you have any pets and dogs that use the garden, and things like that. So I think usually I go for about a 2-week maximum deadline on questionnaires. So we go around posting them through the doors in the area, and people obviously email them back to me as well. And sometimes we use a ballot box to collect them, or they're just posted back to my contact in that area, and I then collect them back up. So there is an option on the questionnaire at the bottom where people put their name, their address, and if they're interested in phase 2. So whoever's ticked that box will still be involved in the project as we continue. And then the data is collected back, analysed, and we give back a summary of where hedgehog pockets are, gardens they're using the most, streets they're using the most, where the most roadkill is, and data like that, which can be quite useful to know. And then phase 2, we send email options. So it's a bit different this year. We are taking a bit more of a remote approach in response to COVID, but also in response to the fact that I do have some other roles as well. So I can't commit fully to sort of garden visits that I did last year and things like that. So we email options back to those that have ticked the box to go into phase 2, and we email them with an option for some resource packs that we send back to them. So these include Shropshire Wildlife Trust information, Hedgehog Heroes of Shropshire resources, so that the ones that are on our website, British Hedgehog Preservation Society leaflets, bookmarks, booklets, Hedgehog Street information, Hedgehog Street resources, and of course our own road signs, which are A4 flexi-card road signs that people quite like putting on their dustbins and things like that. So we do have those available, and a lot of people do request some, so we're quite happy to deliver these as well if anyone's interested in some themselves. So of course, finally, these resource packs are delivered to those that requested them. They can choose sort of what they want in their resource pack, if they want more info on food or more info on camera traps, footprint tunnels, pesticides, we can tailor it, or children's packs, things like that. And we always encourage residents to share back with us what they've done, how they're doing. We love sharing photos of people's gardens and their hedgehog visitors. So that's such a lovely part of the project as well. So we have 6 areas so far confirmed to take part this year. So for this month, we've been working in the Radbrook area in Shrewsbury and the Trinity area in Oswestry. So we have already distributed questionnaires in these areas, and I'm actually collecting them back next week for me to go through and collect data from. And then in May, we are coming to Pontesbury and Grinshill. So I'm currently organising questionnaire dates to go and distribute. So Pontesbury have been quite excited and have got a hedgehog house ready and things like that as well in their community garden. And in June, Condover and Tiverton Village are interested as well. So we do have quite a bit of interest, and we do have some more areas that might be added as well to be confirmed. So a lot of interest, which is always good. So obviously we distributed questionnaires in Radbrook and Oswestry. So the ones in Radbrook were distributed on the 12th of April. So that's my 4-year-old niece posing, who came along to help post some questionnaires, singing through the letterboxes about hedgehogs. So that was an added bonus. So we fold up all of our questionnaires and we spend a couple of hours just posting them where we go. So obviously we're just waiting on how many responses in total we've got. I think at the moment we're up to about 30, and we distributed about 150 questionnaires, and we still have some coming in every day. And then in the Oswestry area, we already have some hedgehog fans. So a few people already have our road signs, as you can see on the telegraph pole. And these were distributed on the 14th. And of course, we're awaiting responses from those as well. So the next project steps are to obviously collect in our Radbrook and Oswestry questionnaires and tally this data so we can summarise something from there. So often we get an idea of corridors hedgehogs are using and things like that. And then we're obviously printing the next questionnaires for the next area. So it just kind of lays out where we're at in the project. And I do always like to mention that we do have all of these resources on the right on our website, which is there. So on our Hedgehog Heroes of Shropshire web page, on the Shropshire Wildlife Trust page, we have some resources that are suited to sort of different areas. So as you can see, and these are options that are also in our project that people can choose from. And we also have our hedgehog page, which you can see on the left. So that is where you will see lots of updates and pictures and all sorts shared as we progress as well. So we like to share what everyone's up to in Shropshire to do with their hedgehogs as well. And so we reach Hedgehog Awareness Week. So it is officially Hedgehog Awareness Week as of next week. So it's always the best week of the year where quite a lot is happening and we can all get involved with what's going on. So Hedgehog Awareness Week is organised by the British Hedgehog Preservation Society, who are actually based in Ludlow, so they are in Shropshire, so not too far. And it takes place annually, and it is usually around the start of May when hedgehogs are getting much more active. So Hedgehog Awareness Week aims to highlight the problems that hedgehogs do face and make them a bit more aware to more of the public and get the public involved especially. So it also aims to show us how we can help them particularly as well. So usually they do quite a few events and talks and things like this, but I think this year it's a bit more online for obvious reasons. So I always like to start the week off by distributing some leaflets in my area, getting the word out and just, you know, doing anything I can on my part to spread the word. So I've included a lovely picture of our reserves officer, Matt, who is displaying some of our warning stickers that we got from the British Hedgehog Preservation Society onto our strimmers. And he wanted one on his helmet, so he got one on his helmet as well. So we were put onto the roll of honours on the Hedgehog Preservation Society website for doing that, and you can request them as well for your own business or your own tools, and you will be added to the roll as well for doing that. And of course my little hedgehog highway as well. So this year's theme particularly is all about asking people to create their own hedgehog haven. So obviously gardens are a stronghold for hedgehogs, and we can make their lives so much easier with very little effort. So tips are going to be given out every week on the British Hedgehog Preservation Society social media. So they're using this hashtag as well. And they will also be doing lots of daily competitions with lots of hedgehog themed prizes and things like that. So they're trying to get people involved a little more online as well. I just took this from a competition they are doing as well, that they sometimes collaborate with a few sort of hedgehog food brands and things like that. So there was a nice little quote which I thought I would take from the chief executive from the Preservation Society as well, which says, obviously our gardens take up such a lot of habitat, and by each making our own plot more hedgehog friendly, we can improve a huge amount of habitat for them. So if you don't have a garden yourself, you can still help by contacting public space managers, neighbours, family and friends to ensure they are all doing their bit. We urge everyone to become a hedgehog champion for their area at Hedgehog Street, which is a project run by BHPS and People's Trust for Endangered Species, where you can join more than 93,000 people that have signed up for free. And you get an email with lots of tips, and you get free resources to download and so much information. It is honestly fantastic source of information. So a bit more information here is that BHPS are hoping to raise £2,000 during Hedgehog Awareness Week. So you can donate to their Hedgehog Appeal at their Just Giving campaign. And they do actually have leaflets and posters available on the website for free to request, that they will post out to you if you want them. If you want to do your own little fundraiser out on your front garden or something, they can post out quite a lot, and they posted quite a bulk amount to me, so it is really nice of them as well. And that's their website, just in case anyone doesn't know. So of course this is a Shropshire Mammal Group talk, so I'm probably preaching to the converted here, but I must celebrate this group and point out just sort of how much you get for just being a part of us. So obviously when COVID's out the way a little more, I will be hoping to run some more hedgehog events face to face. So maybe doing some footprint tunnel surveys, looking for some on camera traps. I would love to look at sort of loaning out some cameras as well for people's gardens if they'd like to. So I do have a few spares. So we really do just get so much in this group, and I'm sure you all already know that anyway. So I do look forward to when we can do a lot more face to face. And that is my wonderful hedgehog talk. So I must say, obviously, without people like you, we can't run projects like this. So a lot of it does rely on our Shropshire Wildlife Trust members. So if you're not already a Shropshire Wildlife Trust member, you would be doing such a great deal for us in helping us out and enabling this kind of work to carry on, because we just couldn't do it otherwise. So your continued support is always appreciated. And thank you for listening to me rambling on about hedgehogs. So if anyone has any question, I'll revert to the chat first and see if I've missed any. Oh, I've answered that one, have I? Ellen, I shall see if I can contact you about that questionnaire if you are interested. So that definitely sounds really interesting. And in response to Claudia, do you send packs out to interested parties that don't live in the mentioned areas? I am definitely very glad to do this because obviously I do have access to a lot of bulk printing, and I do have quite a lot of resources from BHPS. So I always say, if you are interested in any resource packs or any of my road signs, feel free to email me and I can see what I can do remotely if possible. But I do the occasional visits still when I have time free that I'm glad to come and drop one by. So do drop me an email and I'll see what I can do there. So Jen Lloyd says, would you recommend keeping our gardens as dark as possible for minimal impact on hedgehogs, or is some low level white or red light acceptable? I'm asking because I recently surprised a young individual at the feeding station while wearing my head torch. From experience, not scientific research or anything, but from experience, I don't think it has that much of an impact in gardens at the moment. Obviously, I think they do associate, perhaps you have the kitchen light on that shines into the garden, or a timer garden light. They may associate these lights with us being active, so they may actually adjust their behaviour around these lights. But if you just happen upon one with a torch or something like that, they shouldn't be too spooked. They will come back out again when you've gone. And the cameras that we do put out actually are infrared as well anyway, so in response to red lights, I think that's fine as well. I often have a tactic when I want to get a picture of a hedgehog. If I spot it, I kind of have a torch in one hand and my camera in the other, so that I'm not using flash, because I think that can be quite sort of shocking if you use flash on a camera or a phone. So I often recommend sort of shining the torch from behind or on top, sort of, so that it's not in their face, and then you can just take a nice picture with the torch light on them. And that's kind of how I get around that as well. So from Malcolm, to what extent are hedgehogs deterred by being chased by cats? I haven't come across many cats brave enough to actually chase a hedgehog yet.
Well, the reason I ask is that beginning of the month, I had a camera trap out because I wanted to see whether, in fact, hedgehogs were still using the garden. Because,
right.
There's been a change in the fencing at the back, and also next door. Now I've got 2 cats. Anyway, I had 27 clips, all but 3 of them triggered by the cats. But one was triggered by a hedgehog, and I thought, gosh, that hedgehog's moving.
Right.
Hotly pursued by one of the cats.
Yes. Oh, it could be purely sort of playful interest.
Yeah.
Cats really can't do much harm to hedgehogs, and I think hedgehogs know that. I've sort of, in contrast, I've had camera trap footage of my cat. Considering he's quite the mean cat of the neighbourhood, he really is a devil, to be honest. And he was sat on my my path, and I got footage of our hedgehog just completely bumbling into him and barging past, and he was just sat there like completely perplexed, just watching him run off, and he just completely didn't know what to do with himself. I think that's still quite a foreign thing to cats, and they don't know what on earth this spiky thing is that's moving. So yeah, to answer your question, I it's a first for me, so I don't really encounter it very often.
I would add that the cat in question is a young one who will seems to have no fear of anything at the moment.
Oh, well, that says it all then, doesn't it?
It probably hasn't learnt what this thing is.
Yes, it might learn the hard way though,
Yeah.
if it tries.
Well, let's hope so.
Yes.
Anything to keep out of my garden a bit.
Yes, it is a constant battle, I must say.
Could I make a comment, please? I have about 5 cats, different ones coming on and off. I have 2 cameras out most nights, and the cats are off. They've had a sniff once or twice, perhaps got prickled on the nose, but they go. They don't chase them. I've not seen one chase one at all.
No, I haven't yet.
No.
It must be the occasional brave ones.
There's always a first.
Yes, yes. Hello, Brian. Did you have something to say?
Ruby said it.
Oh, okay.
I've had a camera out for many nights. In 5 or 6 years, I've had one hedgehog that actually tweaked a cat and it ran off.
Right.
I've fairly often had cats and hedgehogs on the same video, but they don't interact.
Yes.
Run past one another, so I don't see it as a problem at all.
Yes. No, I do agree from my experience as well. We've even had footage of foxes and hedgehogs, trying to eat from the same bowl before. So I guess it is individual circumstances as well, and just how desperate some animals might be, or bored, So from Martin, oh, thank you. I thought you had a question. That's wonderful. From Sue, what's the minimum area of garden needed to be kept wild? I don't think there is a minimum. Well, obviously, you don't want to just leave like the size of a hand sort of worth of long grass, because that's not going to be very good. But if we're judging from your usual square garden, and you put one corner of that garden, you start to make wild and just see how that goes. I don't think there is minimum maximum we can really talk about. It's just mainly letting one place sort of grow a bit more out of control than usual maybe, and just seeing what becomes of it. You can never sort of judge how big or small it might go, or you just want to be conscious that you're not over manicuring something. You're not defeating the point of leaving that wild area. It does obviously have to be a certain size in itself to actually start attracting something. So yeah, I don't think there's a maximum or minimum to think about there. From Claudia, should we stop feeding them at some point in the year? I believe there can be a risk of some getting overweight. I think it's quite rare to think of a hedgehog that just is overweight. Obviously it can happen. I'm sure it happens with all wildlife, occasional individual somewhere. I personally advise to just keep feeding through winter, just maybe less often, especially as we're getting the warmer winters, the wetter winters, as I mentioned before. So for example, as winter comes, I sort of drop a couple of days that I put food out, or maybe I try once a week if it really isn't getting touched. But I do have weeks on and off where the food's gone and then it's not gone and then it's gone. And I just want to make sure that it's there and it's providing for them, because as we do get these warmer winters, they're going to really need it. That they won't know what to do if they're waking up occasionally, and especially in winter, they shouldn't be at risk of being overweight, because that's the time when their bodies are really losing that energy and losing that weight. So essentially that time of year, it's no harm really. And of course in summer they will be eating a lot of their own natural sort of food as well, so they won't be relying so much on our food, but it is there as a supplementary. And if you are ever worried about the fact that might be a hedgehog that's overweight or can't ball up, always call BHPS or your local rescue for advice, and they can advise if it's a healthy hedgehog or not. So that's what I would say. And dogs kill hedgehogs, though. I don't know what that was in response to. Oh, right, yes, to our discussion. Yes, so dogs can be quite a risk, but it often depends on their temperament themselves. The most we can advise to do if you're worried about your dog and hedgehogs in your garden is there's quite a handy thing that BHPS said on sort of signalling that you're about to let the dog out by turning lights on or you know, making the garden bright, and then hedgehogs can start to sort of know that, oh, this is the time when the dog comes out. Or in extreme cases, you know, using a lead or just staying completely close to your dog and really supervising them even while they're out in your garden. That's if you know they might go for a hedgehog and you might have hedgehogs in your garden. But oftentimes dogs come out with quite a painful mouth as well if they do try something with a hedgehog. So it is more so depending on the dogs themselves and their temperament and what they're likely to do. And Rick says there is a spectacular clip on the Shropshire Mammals Facebook page recently of a fox snapping at a hedgehog, and the hedgehog rolls up fractionally before the fox snaps, and you can see the hedgehog bounce. Yeah, so I'm sure there is the occasional fox that will try his luck, isn't there? I don't think I've seen that. I might have to actually scroll through a bit to find that. That sounds very interesting, yeah. So I have seen footage, obviously, of foxes and hedgehogs just completely ignoring each other. So it does depend on circumstances as well, and who visits your garden, as well as hedgehogs as well. So does anyone else have any more questions at all?
Can I say something about hedgehog food?
Yes.
I've been into hedgehogs for quite a while, and we know cat food's regulated, but a lot of the hedgehog food that you can buy is not regulated. And it is important to look at there's a good content of protein in it, because some people think you can feed them mealworms and sunflower seeds. They cause a bone disease and can cause a hedgehog to die very quickly and a tragic death. And I am concerned about some of the, you know, the bulk of it is what I call rubbish. It's wheat, it's maize. They need good protein, so good content of chicken, at least 50%. A lot of people say you shouldn't feed hedgehogs with fish, but I belong to a place called Hedgehog Cabin, and I use Twitter, and Pearlie advises an awful lot on this, because you know, it is really concerning. We don't want to cause hedgehogs any more harm than is already out there, and I don't think it's promoted enough that, you know, we could be doing harm. I have to be careful what brands I name, but there are some that are promoted an awful lot out there. Brambles, I'll tell you, Brambles is very good, and Maltbiz is very good, but there are others. Just be careful, because anybody can set up, as a hedgehog rescue place, anybody can set up and sell hedgehog food. Just be careful. If you can look at the ingredients, it is important.
Yeah. That is a very good point. So that's kind of why I start trying to advise more on the cat food and the biscuits and that sort of route, because more and more these days we're seeing brands that have been around for so long that people are only just realizing, oh, maybe this isn't, you know, good for hedgehogs, and it really does need to be shown more so by the companies. They should know better, really, as well. So maybe they need to do a bit more research.
It's like the bread and milk. You know, for a long time, people believed bread and milk was good. It's not, you know,
exactly. Yeah. So it is difficult. And luckily, I think the mealworms thing is catching on now, and people are realising, you know, they're not so good for hedgehogs. So, yeah, that's why I say it's often cheaper and easier anyway, just to use some cat food and cat biscuits, things like that from your local supermarket. So that is really nice advice. Thank you. And so, yes, so Go Cat Biscuit. any biscuits really. A lot of people like using kitten biscuits because they're a lot smaller and possibly easier for hedgehog mouths. So yeah, that's wonderful. Any more questions? Oh, I think that ends us tonight then. I just want to thank you for joining this talk. I know it can be quite boring after a while with so many Zoom talks after so long in lockdown. So I do appreciate everyone coming along and listening, and hopefully we can get some nice hedgehog visitors this year and share it around and see what everyone's doing. So if anyone ever does get any footage or photos or anything going on, do share it to the Shropshire Mammal Group and I'll see it, and that would be lovely to see. So thank you very much, everyone.
Well, biggest thank you to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm sure there'll be another hedgehog talk at some point. Can't keep me quiet for too long.
Thank you.
So, wonderful.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.
Thanks.